Hey guys, the Shadow here, with a brief warning before you start this story. This story contains very graphic and disturbing detail about obscene acts, if you want to say that. So if you have sensitive viewers, don't let them watch it. Anyways, lock your doors, bar your windows, turn out the lights, and prepare for Womanizer by The Shadow. Now relax, this won't hurt too much. He's moving too fast. The errant grains of salt flew across the table as the man shook sodium all over his fried eggs in the diner. Oh wait, the pepper has now joined the mix, not coming out nearly as freely as the salt. Once the sneeze-inducing fog cleared, the man realized that his food was now inedible. "Check, please," rang out through the diner, and the waitress gave a sour look. She approached the table and added sarcastically,
"Was everything all right for you, Ian?"
Ian gave a stupid smile, trying to cause trouble. "Of course, everything is fine with you, darling." The waitress left the check and walked away with an expression of disdain on her face. Ian was a regular, coming in every night around 10:30 and leaving at about 1. He always had his eye set on Corey, who worked nights from Wednesday through Saturday. She was a knockout in his eyes. To others, she was just the girl next door, rather plain looking. Ian walked in and sat in his usual booth, scanning the area for Corey. She was nowhere in sight, and instead, Agnes walked up and stood there in her usual way.
"What can I get you, hon?"
she asked around a mouthful of chewing gum. Ian muttered something along the lines of, "Still deciding, thanks. Anything just to get rid of that nuisance." Agnes was a kind woman, and that was the kind of woman Ian couldn't stand. His mother had been a kind woman up until she left him, and his dad, not being able to stand the growing tensions that were mounting in the home. Ever since that day, he could only get it up with women that hated him to the very core. It got pretty easy after a while to snub the kind ones, but given the right circumstances, some were able to get him to admit that some days he did prefer the kinder ones. Ever since he tried to quit drinking, an admission like that was near impossible to talk out of him. He was a womanizer, through and through, and surprisingly, that was one of his more endearing traits. A while later, Agnes came back and Ian begrudgingly ordered, inquiring afterward of the whereabouts of Corey.
"Haven't seen her since Saturday. Maybe she skipped town or something like that."
Agnes walked away and Ian smiled. Initially, his smile was out of politeness, but now that he was alone, it turned more sinister. Ian entered the diner the next night, pretending to look for Corey. This time, he was wearing a plain white button-down shirt and a unique fedora, one with horizontal triple pinstripes. He sat in his usual spot, holding his hands in front of him and waiting for the waitress, which turned out to be Agnes.
"Coffee to start?" she asked, worry in her eyes.
Ian nodded and glanced around, feeling paranoid. Slouching down slightly, he surveyed the diner. There were maybe 10 other patrons scattered about, all too focused on their food, conversations, or both to notice him. Agnes set the coffee mug down rather heavily on the table, a bit of coffee sloshing out of the mug. Ian looked closer at Agnes and saw her hands shaking. Ian smiled innocently and Agnes walked off. His new victim had been chosen. She may be a bit older than his usual prey, and far from his type, but he felt it was about time to try out a kind one for once. Ian stood in the shadows, waiting for Agnes to finish her shift. It was 3 a.m. and there was no one in sight. The side door swung open and Agnes walked out, heading for her car. It was now or never. Ian stepped out, blocking her path.
"Oh, hello, Ian,"
Agnes said with surprise and, "What's this?" a hint of trepidation. "Yes," Ian replied. "Hey Agnes, I was thinking that we should maybe get a drink and then go back to my place, if that's not too lowbrow for you." Agnes looked at Ian with wide eyes, trying to process what exactly was happening, but it was too late. The hypnosis of Ian's gaze had taken hold and she found herself taking his arm, saying,
"Lead on, handsome."
Ian walked through his house, pausing at the locked door in the back of the kitchen. Pulling out his key ring, he unlocked the series of padlocks and opened the door, an odor of suffering wafting out. He inhaled deeply, relishing in the raw sense of goodness. The front of his jeans tightened pleasurably as he inhaled. He descended the stairs, preparing for a wonderful experience. Corey and Agnes were down there, chained to the wall, his current love objects. He loved it, the dominance asserted over people that hated him. People is the appropriate term here, as he didn't have much of a problem swinging both ways, but he still preferred the ladies, at least when it came to the confinement. They were easier to subdue than the young, strapping men, and their essence was much more exotic. The tightness in his jeans became unbearable as he reached the bottom of the stairs. Little did he know, that bulge of male dominance would soon be the least of his discomfort. He rounded the corner and froze, the bulge instantly shrinking as anger filled every cell of his sick, depraved body. The chains hung limp on the walls, no one restraining them now. He began to pace throughout the cramped basement like a lion stalking its prey. He was on the hunt, attempting to pick up the slightest trace of a scent of his captives. It was difficult to do so, as the waist of both women was strong, the scent masking any trace of their whereabouts. Ian was frustrated and took it out on the shelf laden with tools of a torturous sort. The clang and clatter of the tools as they hit the concrete floor echoed throughout the room, followed by the crash as the shelf followed suit. The sound of the shelf collapsing was a bit louder than Ian expected, distracting him. Ian saw stars and then felt an immense pain in his leg before he passed out. When he came to, he was chained to the wall, naked, humiliated, and furious. He struggled against his restraints, but to no avail. Corey stepped out from behind a shelf holding a long butcher knife. From the other side of the shelf emerged Agnes, carrying a whip. The bedlam that ensued is a bit too graphic to describe here. Ian's cries echoed throughout the room, more satisfied than painful. When all was said and done, Ian's body was laced with cuts and his penis lay several feet away from him, kicked by his feet as he flailed. Ian was growing weak from blood loss and struggling, and Corey and Agnes knew they needed to finish him before natural causes got him. Corey held Ian's arms tightly and leaned in, putting her mouth right next to his ear and whispering,
I hope you taste as good as you look.
Corey then snapped at his ear, tearing it clean off with surgical precision. Agnes moved in, striking like a cobra as she split his throat, smiling as she did so. Both Agnes and Corey tilted their heads back, relishing in the shower of pure blood that sprayed from the wound. It had been so long since they had fed, and so they took their time, having a little fun with each other, licking the blood off each other and then some more disturbing stuff. Remarkably, Ian remained alive through all this, remaining in a semi-conscious state. As his life faded from all around him, he felt teeth sink into his flesh, ripping and tearing it from his muscles. Ian tried to smile, loving every minute of it, for after all, he was a sicko to the core.